Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Let's talk about the Lion's Gate and the full moon in Aquarius. So there's quite a bit to unpack. I'll try and get through it smoothly and quickly. So I just want to start by reading something that I posted yesterday because I think it's extremely important, especially given that this full moon and this Lion's Gate is being held by these energies, which is Saturn and Uranus. So I'm just going to read something and then we'll talk about it. Anything we suppress, Saturn, becomes a distorted inner imprint that includes sexual desires, full stop. Uranus, being the planet that liberates, actually speaks to how we deviate. Think about that word in the context that it's normally used, often having a negative connotation when in fact there's nothing negative about it at all. So how we deviate, because to deviate essentially means to revolutionize, to break away from Uranus. When we revolutionize, when we foresee a new paradigm, a new reality, when we integrate a new level of understanding, a new level of consciousness, Uranus, we are breaking away from what? We're breaking away from the conditioned layers of the imprints in our psyche that have been accumulated for lifetimes and lifetimes. So from a Saturn Capricorn point of view, there is a fear of losing control. The experience of fear in the context of fear of losing control in ourself and in what happens around us in our life is the direct correlation to Saturn. Hence why Saturn holds us back. Hence why there are certain restrictions and limitations that we may feel, which could be for all sorts of reasons, typically because of the perception that we have of reality and or others and or ourself. So from a Saturn point of view, there's a sense of fear of losing control. The primary brain, which corresponds to Uranus, however, actually wants to do exactly that. It wants to actually lose control because Uranus represents the opposite to control. It represents freedom. So there's something in our primary brain that knows that senses that feels that. And it's a very deep, instinctual, primal component of our being, of our beingness, of who we are. But of course, that's been masked and covered with all the layers of conditioning. Again, Saturn. So the primary brain wants to do exactly that, lose control, which is Uranus. And this is where we access what we term as chaos. And again, that word chaos often has a negative connotation to it, but chaos is not negative at all. Chaos, actually, the Greek word chaos actually means formless. Literally, that's what it means. It means formless, to break away from form, to deconstruct form, which is Saturn. So why do we want to access chaos? Why does the right brain want to access chaos, which is Uranus? Because it senses, it realizes, it begins to recognize that I'm not growing anymore in this in these layers of conditions that have been accumulated. I'm not growing anymore. So that the primal brain, it activates, it triggers. It says, you know, I need to grow, I need to move, I need to evolve. Now, the reconciliation with that within us as human beings, with our psychology, with this consensus reality, with how we are conditioned, the interface of those insights is not an easy thing to reconcile and to integrate, because everything, as it appears on the Saturn layer of things, on this consensus 3D reality, everything will present as a resistance. The resistance is coming from inside our own self, which is Saturn. So in order to listen, activate that primal brain, which is also the right brain, which is Uranus, we have to access a tremendous level of courage. It takes balls, it takes courage to step into the unknown, because that's where Uranus takes you. It takes you into the unknown. And the majority of people on the planet are terrified of the unknown. That's not a judgment, that's just a reality. So the resistance comes up and internally and says, well, why would I take that direction or step away from this when I know what this is? It may not be that great, but I know what it is. So I have a sense of security within that. I'm familiar with this field. I'm familiar with this way of life. I'm familiar with these values. I'm familiar with these beliefs, these perceptions, and it helps me inform how I think I'm controlling my life. So to access this chaos region of our brain is to step into Uranus. And the way to do that is through deep, 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 deep courage, which is all the Leo energy that's active at the moment. And that's why I'm emphasizing all of this, because, you know, the Lion's Gate, the sun in Leo, Venus will be ingressing into Leo on the day of the full moon as well. So there's an abundance of light pouring in with the Lion's Gate, but I'll get to that in a moment. So this process relative to activating Uranus, breaking away from Saturn, the shackles, you got to break the shackles. Everyone's got shackles on them. And not only from this lifetime, from thousands of lifetimes. So to do that, we need to employ a very authentic level of courage from within our heart, and then align the left brain, right brain. Left brain being linear, Mercury, Gemini, and right brain, of course, being Uranus, also Jupiter and Sag, which employs intuition. So, and I just finished this little thing that I wrote up, which largely comes from Jeffrey Wolf Green's material, of course. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are the agents that help us decondition. And how that Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and it starts from Chiron, because Chiron is the body that helps us activate Uranus. We can't go to Uranus unless we go into Chiron's cave. So these outer planets, transpersonal planets, they're not easy energies to activate. But Chiron is the key. And with the Chiron-Jupiter conjunction coming up, which is in play now and all through the rest of the year to some extent, and perfects its conjunction in, when was it? March or April next year. I just did a video on this. It's a previous video before this one. So watch that if you want to get a, a bigger picture view on the Jupiter-Chiron conjunction in Aries and just how powerful that is. So deconditioning these planets, these transpersonal planets, enable us to step into how we might decondition, and then how we will give birth to new paradigms, because the old paradigms are dying rapidly before our very eyes. As much as many people are in denial, don't want to see it, want to go back to the way things were, which is Saturn. It's that level of, I want to go back to the way the world was 3 years ago. We're never going to go back there. It's not going to happen. That's not me saying it. The evidence is everywhere. And that's Saturn that pulls us back into that way of life, into those perceptions that we had, those values and beliefs that we've had, which most are being smashed through because so much has been exposed. Because of the level of exposure that's gone on the last 3 years, it comes back to each of us, because we've had to reassess what we've believed our entire lives. Our values and our beliefs create security for us. That's what they do. And all of that's been smashed and challenged, particularly because of Uranus being in Taurus. Our values, our beliefs that create the reality, the construct of the reality we perceive, which helps us survive, Taurus, is all being challenged to the hilt. And everyone is being confronted with at least asking a question around this. What have I believed this entire time about this world, about these systems, about reality? Everyone's been confronted with that question. Many are in denial still, but it's there. So I just wanted to start with those comments, because this full moon takes us into this energy very, very strongly, because Saturn and Uranus really have been dancing around in this square aspect, which is a dynamic, active, conflicting type of energy, particularly because of the nature of the planets that are squaring each other, Saturn and Uranus. Control, liberation, freedom, truth. And those two are they're at odds with each other because they're in this square aspect. And they have been, more or less the last 2.5 years, through this whole story that's been playing out. If you were to look at nothing else and just looked at the meaning of Saturn, Uranus, their myths, their stories, how they related to each other, and just how opposing they are, and then to add to it a square aspect, which means, two energies that cannot occupy the same space, they're squaring each other, hence conflict. So you've got that level, you've got the level of the two forces that are completely different in nature on every single level. One was controlling everything. He even ate his own children, Saturn, for fear of being overtaken by them. And the other one, Uranus, stole the fire from the gods and gave it to humanity to wake people up. That is a metaphor for injecting consciousness into humanity. So these energies that are still at odds with this full moon coming up, they're extremely close in their square position, and it'll be this time is when they get particularly close again, and it's the last time they're going to be this close. But we've been experiencing and seeing this energy all around us, for almost 2.5 years. So then it wouldn't be surprising that this full moon is extremely important for those reasons, especially. And also that the full moon occurs just, a couple of days after the Lion's Gate. The Lion's Gate is today. I'm doing this video on the 8th of the 8th, 2022. And I specifically had this in mind the last couple of days, that I wanted to sit here and speak, share through this portal that's completely, open, activated today. I mean, the truth of the matter is that, and there are different schools of thought on this, but the energy of this portal of the Lion's Gate, some are of the view that it begins really when the sun ingresses into Leo. So, it depends if you want to hold that view. And it's not even about a view, it's really about feeling into it. What do you feel about it? How does it feel to you? Can you step into that energy? Before I talk about that again, I just want to say that with this Uranus-Saturn square being very tied into this full moon, you'll see in a moment, I'll bring up the chart, Saturn is conjunct the moon and Uranus is square it and square the sun. And the nodes are there as well. So it's a grand fixed cross, very powerful energies. And if you, first of all, where did the new moon begin? The new moon was in Leo, about 5 degrees of Leo. So where is that in your chart? That's where this full moon energy began, at that part of your chart, wherever Leo is. And so 2 weeks later, we have the full moon in Aquarius, opposite sign to Leo. That's the full moon. So wherever the new moon started in your chart, the full moon will be in the opposite placement, right? So it's that area of life that, or those 2 areas that are being, activated by this new moon in Leo, Lion's Gate, and full moon in Aquarius, in conjunction with the Saturn-Uranus energies, holding that space with a lot of tension there, a lot of tension. And you may just be feeling it inwardly. It's not a very comfortable energy at all. It's very, very challenging. Because it comes down to those points that I made at the very beginning about the Saturn component within us that is conditioned imprints, and which speaks to the beliefs and values that we have, which have to change because the world is changing. Everything is changing. That's called evolution. We can't stay the same. Things can't stay the same because everything is energy. And nothing stops moving at all. So there's just this movement all the time, even though everything to some extent looks kind of still, which is the nature of Saturn on the 3D projected reality. But energy is moving all the time. And we have these waves that come in that ramp up that energy, and things move in more cataclysmic ways. Cataclysmic is the nature of Uranus. Saturn is order and structure and control and norms and rules, and you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do it this way. Uranus steps in and says, no, I don't have to do it that way. I don't have to believe that. I can find what feels real and authentic to me from my heart center, Leo. But the challenge here is with Uranus in Taurus, because it's testing our very ability to survive. That's what Uranus in Taurus has largely brought to our field of experience, right? Particularly over the last 2.5, 3 years, because of what I would consider an engineered bug planted into this gorgeous land, Gaia, Mother Earth. And anyway, whether it's engineered or whether it's not, doesn't really matter, because the point is that something is here and it is affecting people, right? Certainly not in the way that it's being portrayed, but it does affect certain people in certain ways. In any case, people's survival has been challenged, whether it's been with your health, whether it's been with work, People have had to sell their businesses. We know. I don't need to repeat the things that have been happening for the last 2.5 years. We know what's been happening. That's called survival. We've all had to survive this hurricane that's swooped through. And so this Uranus square Saturn coming up to its final dance together is the end, to an extent, of the intensity of what's been happening on the earth plane the last 2.5 years, and that there is a new paradigm or paradigms that have already been born. And it's just that a lot of people, they haven't caught up yet because they're still holding on to the old, the way things were, which is Saturn. So let me okay, so this is the full moon chart, and it takes place on the 12th of August, which will be the 11th for everyone in the Northern Hemisphere. This chart is done for Melbourne, Australia. And we can see that Venus has just, ingressed into Libra. Yeah, Libra. I'm thinking of the Venus star point in Libra, which doesn't happen until October 2022. I meant to say ingressed into Leo. There is the sun in Leo, which is opposite the moon, which is what creates a full moon. There is Saturn conjunct the moon, obviously opposite the sun. There is Uranus essentially forming a T-square to the sun and moon and Saturn. And within this story, we have the nodes as well. So this is called a grand fixed cross. And it's a grand fixed cross with the nodes, with the moon's nodes as part of the story. So it really brings in those layers of further things being revealed and exposed. South Node in Scorpio. That South Node in Scorpio, that's bringing up some pretty dark shit. Some pretty interesting things that have been hiding and have been deliberately hidden and so forth. So that's kind of smashing through all of that. And the North Node, in Taurus is with Uranus there, forming that conjunction, which I've also spoken about in a separate video. Mars was there and goddess Urania was there as well for that quadruple conjunction, actually. But even just the Uranus North Node, telling us, pointing us to the need to actually integrate new values that would be more authentically aligned with who we are. Authentic Uranus, values Taurus, North Node, future direction, integration, Taurus, values, survival, beliefs, all of that, is the beliefs, the values inform our perception of reality and what we believe, and then they feed into how we survive. So this final dance between Uranus and Saturn is extremely important. Now, typically when you get a transit between Uranus and Saturn, they'll have 3 passages where the exactness of that aspect will perfect at 3 separate passages. So you get the beginning of that transit, you get the middle section, and then you get the final hit, and that's what we well, we've sort of moved away from that now, but the point is that they are still within range. And so we really are at the tail end of this collective conflict around the old establishment, Saturn, trying to maintain control over humanity, Aquarius, and Uranus is saying no. It's saying wake up, decide for yourself what feels authentic, what feels right on your pathway. And that would mean questioning your own values, Taurus, the values that you've had up until now. Look, the truth of the matter is that a lot of people are not going to do it, because a lot of people are, consensus reality. They live on that level, So anything that threatens security, no one's comfortable about that. No one. Because the personality component of who we are really, it needs to feel safe and secure. And that feeling safe and secure also means holding on to a life, a perspective of life that you've always had. If you suddenly wake up and realize that life is not what you thought, that's a pretty daunting feeling. And that means changing a hell of a lot of things in your life. And how much do people like to change? Very little. But the process of evolution within ourselves and from a collective perspective and from the point of view of Mother Earth, they're not going to ask for your permission. The change is going to occur whether we like it or not. Some people will have to be dragged along because the resistance will be so strong. And that's up to each of us to navigate individually based on our own understanding, insight, inner standing, and what feels authentic to us. And this is where the Lion's Gate becomes super powerful at this time, because last year, the Lion's Gate, we didn't have this nodal axis thing happening, right? So this is this year. And I think that, that's a pretty important omen that this Lion's Gate ties up with these moon's nodes, and then you've got the Saturn-Uranus there, and then the full moon with Saturn and Uranus impacting. So what is the Lion's Gate? The Lion's Gate is it's an old traditional, it depends which sort of teachings you go into, but you go into the Egyptian material, connects to the God star Sirius, one of the brightest stars, the alignment that's happening with the Earth at that time and that particular star, and the Sun in Leo, that whole energetic portal that lines up is at its most powerful relative to how we can access that light at this time of the year, every single year. So it's not a new thing, it's something that happens every year and has happened probably for infinity. But obviously, the more we evolve as we continue our human journey and our soul journey, and the more there are very powerful shifts in consciousness coming through, the more this Lion's Gate will speak to us in more powerful ways, individually and collectively. So the Lion's Gate is, I feel, it points to our heart, but the spiritual heart, the warrior heart as well, but the spiritual heart, because it is the alignment of our sun and our spiritual sun, Sirius. So that the light and spirit is pouring down, pouring through in magnificent, infinite levels at this moment. That's why it's called a lion's gate or a portal. It's an energy, a vortex of energy that opens up relative to our position on Earth, where we can consciously step into and integrate this light, spirit, heart-centeredness, so that we can realign actually with heart and source. We all through Saturn's lens and through the structure of reality, sort of fall away from our path. And to deviate is also another meaning to that word, is to to fall away from your path as well. Or actually the word, sorry, what I meant to say there was, that's right, the word sin, which is, in terms of religious indoctrination, is understood to be something that's dirty, wrong, bad, punishable. But the word sin has its root in deviate. And to deviate is to sort of fall off one's path, as it were, your authentic path. So with the Lion's Gate, we have this invitation energetically to step closer into our own spiritual heart and embrace and embody and integrate the pouring of light that's coming through at this time. It's a very subtle, energetic journey and process, and it impacts all of us differently. Some people have quite visceral and vivid visions, or visceral experiences with these portals, because some people are very that they will have very specific ceremonial practices and traditions and rituals and things like that at this time. And that's a very clear intended focus at this time with this portal. So when you are aware on that level and activating the energy from that level, you are likely to have a more visceral experience, perhaps. And sometimes it can still be very subtle, but there is something very powerful that's activating in our own heart center, which of course is Leo anyway. So the invitation with the Lionsgate portal is to further expand, right, that heart center, the alignment with source. And why would we want to do that? Well, from the point of view of Saturn and the point of view of the personality, couldn't really care less about that. It's, the world of the personality and the world of Saturn would be more interested in security and money, control. But Saturn and Uranus, actually, their cycles are very interesting, because the Uranus return happens every 84 years, right? And the Saturn return happens every 29 years. So you need 3 Saturn returns to catch up to Uranus's cycle. But both of them speak to very, very distinct passages in life. Saturn's very easy. It's you just track it every 7 years. And you can track that in the biological development of the human being, birth, 7 years of age, 14, 21, 29, and so forth, and how each passageway at those ages speaks to the conscious construct of reality and how we are integrating and experiencing life in that way. And Uranus has very different passageways in different ages, 42 being one of the most critical ones, which is often associated in the world of psychology as the midlife crisis. Why is it the midlife crisis? Because it's the experience of waking up and looking around at your life and asking yourself, what have I been doing the last 42 years? What has my life actually meant? What's my purpose in life? So I've got $1 million in the bank, I've got 3 cars, and I've got 5 houses. So what does that actually mean? Apart from giving me some comfort and some security and some luxurious things that I can access, what does that actually all mean relative to who I am and why I am here? Now, people who get to that Uranus, it's Uranus opposite Uranus at the age of 42, depending on the individual, you know, they won't recognize necessarily that there's an inner component to life that hasn't been integrated, and so the external manifestation of what I've created isn't fulfilling enough for me. But I don't know why. I don't know what else I can actually achieve out there. I've achieved just about everything, so why do I still feel so empty? That's the call of Uranus. So how did I get onto that? There's a reason why I got onto that. Oh, that's right. I think I was just referring to just generally speaking, the Saturn-Uranus energies and their cycles, and how, depending on what age you're at as well, how this Uranus square Saturn would be speaking to you right now. And also if Saturn and Uranus are in angular houses of your birth chart, transiting in angular houses, the Saturn-Uranus square would be felt a lot more acutely. Or if Saturn and Uranus were activating, you know, personal point or personal planets in your chart, you know, such as the ascendant, descendant, top of the chart, bottom of the chart, ICMC, or, you know, Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, Mercury, then you'd be feeling these energies a lot more strongly. And the conflict, the inherent conflict is Saturn holding us back, which creates, it contracts, right? It just holds the energy and contracts it back. And Uranus comes in and just breaks through that. And so the inherent conflict is, on the one hand, sensing that you want to hold on to this part of your life, or these beliefs, or this way of living, or this way of perceiving. And then there's the call of Uranus inviting you into a completely different paradigm, which feels very unsafe and very insecure because it's the paradigm that's unknown. And so the inherent challenge is there. And so there's this wrestling going on internally within all of us to some extent of how do I embrace this Uranus, North Node in Taurus paradigm, questioning my values, what I've believed my whole life, versus trying to keep intact what I've created and built. It's not an easy thing to do, you know. It's not an easy thing to be confronted with. So this full moon is highlighting a lot of these themes, is what I'm getting at ultimately. I really love the full moon in Aquarius typically, but this because my own moon is in Aquarius natally, but this full moon is very challenging, I feel. You know, it's conjunct Saturn, square Uranus. So the themes that I've been highlighting, even though they may, to some of you might think, well, how's this related to the full moon? It is completely related, because Saturn is right there with this full moon. Uranus is right there. So those are the themes that are being illuminated. What does the full moon do? It illuminates. The moon is a timer in the chart. It's a light and a timer of themes that are there underneath, have been building up for a long time, or are continuing to build moving forward. And the moon just acts as a light that lights it all up, to show it to you. Now, what's it showing us here? It's showing us the tension between Uranus and Saturn. And with the sun in Leo, let's not forget, the moon in Aquarius, to some extent, will be asking us to step into an objective perspective. And the sun in Leo would be asking us to be courageous in the actions that we wish to participate in or activate. And if it's not actions, then it's the courage to step into your own heart center and be true and authentic Uranus. The healthiest way to integrate the Saturn here with this full moon, it's challenging to come up with nice points for Saturn, but I'll come up with a couple. I guess the positive takeaway with Saturn there, being there with the moon and opposite the sun, is, well, relative to your perspective on reality, the construct of reality that you've created in your own mind, perceptions and so forth, how does it inform you of your path, your evolutionary path in growth? How much work have you done on yourself, really? And how much of that work on yourself speaks to a more unified position of the collective, that is being unified with all our brothers and sisters? So at a more mundane, simple, basic level, Saturn on the full moon can also bring up matters of isolation, separation. That can bring up mother figures and women, because it's the moon, and the moon is a feminine body which connects to women, whether that's the mother or a woman in general. So there's some story here as well. For certain people, there'll be a story that specifically speaks to their own mother or a specific woman in their life. Now, is the moon and Saturn a comfortable energy? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Why do I say that? Because the moon, which has an egocentric structure to it, ultimately seeks to feel nurtured, secure, nurtured, protected. Now, while Saturn may mirror some of those things, such as security, it's also a very cold and hard energy. Saturn doesn't nurture, the moon does. So what's going to happen here is that Saturn will overpower the moon to some extent, and to a large extent for some people. So that, in other words, the full moon is going to be felt at a heavier sort of level through this Saturn being present right there with it. On the other hand, and this is just a full moon, but we are looking at it in conjunction with everything else that's activating it as well, right? The other thing that might come to light for certain people would be the matter of emotional boundaries. Maybe you've had to work on emotional boundaries the last couple of years, the last 6 months, the last whatever. And so this alignment here can also show you how much you've grown inside your own self relative to healthy emotional boundaries. That would be the best takeaway with Saturn on the moon. And that would take wisdom, experience, maturity, understanding otherwise it's felt as a cold, harsh energy that takes something away from us. It sort of snuffs the moon out a little bit. So that's why I'm saying it's not it's not an easy energy at all. It really isn't. So it just depends, you know, where this full moon gets activated in your own chart, where the Saturn-Uranus is triggering things off in your birth chart, and the moon's nodes, of course, as well. But in all of this, at a more encouraging level, let's say, we have the Lion's Gate that's in full bloom when this full moon occurs. And we can really take advantage of stepping into that energy, that vibration. And just from a more physical level, the Lion's Gate can also be a wonderful time to help us activate that inner child, which I've spoken about, I think, in a couple of videos ago, relative to Ceres being in Leo, pointing us to how out of touch are we with the inner child and with things that we enjoy in life. How consumed have we become in work and money, the world of money, greed, making more and more and more. I know somebody who makes 250 grand a year and they're not happy with that. They're after a job that pays them more than that. In my opinion, that's just greed. And some might say, well, that's a judgment. Yeah, well, I'm making a judgment. I think that's greedy. I think 250 grand a year is not a bad pay packet. So where does it end? It doesn't really end with an insatiable ego. It just always wants more. So the energy of Leo Lion's Gate reminds us of the playful, lighter, heartfelt side of life that we can connect to, especially with Ceres there in Leo, but at that more spiritually aligned ascension process of life, which many follow, understand, have integrated the process of ascension, because it is happening. It's been happening for a while, actually, but we just have different waves and levels of integration that come through. And this year, the Lion's Gate, the heart activation, is at a really critical point because of the nature of Uranus and Saturn lining up with the nodes. There's an incredible layer that's being dismantled, that we are moving away from. And so one part might be there's a sense of that the inner resistance, Saturn, and tension with Uranus, because the Saturn part of our life, as I said before, it's where we feel safe and secure and we feel like we are in control, when the truth of the matter is we control virtually nothing. Very little do we control. And so the tension is between what we think we can control and the desire to be free, Uranus, and how to reconcile those two polarities that we need to find a way to integrate these energies by recognizing what's been, Saturn, which rules time, particularly linear time. Uranus rules time, space, that's got nothing to do with this linear experience, really. That's why Uranus corresponds to trauma in evolutionary astrology, because it corresponds to the long-term memory body, which holds the memories of all our experiences. And in all those experiences we've all had a dose of trauma here and there. And perhaps the Uranus in Taurus is also stimulating collectively at the moment the memories of having to have lived through life where our very survival was severely threatened by the nature of reality, and we are reliving that in a different way this time round. But what happens is Uranus activates the memories from previously, and so now we have Uranus in Taurus, which has been there for a while. So this is a theme that's kind of, lurking there for each of us in our psyche. And depending on the Taurus archetype in our birth chart, if that's really challenged, then the Uranus in Taurus is not going to feel particularly comfortable, because the memories of having to survive difficult lives, becoming destitute and homeless, whatever it is, all that gets triggered and activated inside us, and put that in conjunction with a reality that threatens our very survival in the numerous ways that it has for the last 2.5 years. Well, imagine what's being activated inside us. And it's not easy, but I guess the answer is, well, we will survive it. We are surviving it. We have survived it. We're still here for those of us that are. And so we have to find a way to integrate into a new paradigm that aligns and is congruent. I use this word in my previous video because I love that word, congruent, which is just being authentic, essentially. We have to integrate a new paradigm that is congruent with who we are, with who we truly are, once we remove those conditioned layers, Saturn, peeling back the onion. So this full moon, it amplifies all these things for all of us in different ways. But I really love that Venus has ingressed into Leo. She's going to really warm and radiate the whole lionsgate from the level of Venus, which comes through the essence of Venus. I mean, Venus has many different components to the archetypal expression of that energy, that planet. There's the Venus star point, there's natal Venus in our chart, there's Venus in rulership, exaltation, detriment, or fall. There's being born with Venus retrograde. There's so many different ways of understanding Venus, but at the core, essential level, Venus is the body that at the highest level enables us to fuse in Neptune, which is her higher octave, which is what? It's spirit and love. It's unconditional love. And Venus has that magnetic ability to harmonize and bring in love in order to create a greater sense of peace in our own heart, therefore then being able to see it in the world. So Venus in Leo radiates and oozes the heart center, being more in touch with our heart in a deep, meaningful, profound way, not some fake bullshit way. A lot of people just fake it. They just talk shit. They fake their lives. They fake who they present themselves to be. It's all just a show. That's the negative side of Leo. Or they're just completely immobilized by their fears, Saturn. So Leo really invites us into that core heart center, being true to our heart. And I said this in another video as well. When you do something from your heart, you really feel it. And what does that feel like? Well, it feels different for each of us because it depends who you are, and it depends what it is you are doing from your heart. But we can say that the common theme in that statement is that when you feel something in your heart and you are doing it from your heart, it's not an effort. It's not a job. It's not hard work. it's actually the opposite to all of that. It makes you feel joy and happiness. It's pleasant, right? It feels natural. You feel connected and aligned to it. Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be some big grand thing out there on the platform of the cosmos for everybody to see it and you to get recognition. I'm not even talking about any of that stuff. Just talking about you, how you feel in that space within you, how you bring that out to experience feeling of my heart is in this and I'm doing it because I love it. And that could be watering your garden, planting flowers, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that connection to that heart center. And Leo brings us to those portals, to that space within ourselves. It radiates, it warms us up, it brings courage, leadership, empowerment, confidence. And when those levels are integrated in a way where we bring awareness with it and not just self-centered, when we bring awareness into it, which is the opposite, Aquarius. See, Leo is very personal. It can get very caught up in itself, right? That's why its polarity, Aquarius, reminds it that, hey, there's a whole human race out there. It's not just you. It's not just about you. There's a whole human collective family. And that's the beauty of the Leo Aquarius. From the highest integrated level, Leo enables us to activate our heart into whatever we want to do or who we want to be or who we are becoming. And Aquarius gives us that objective perspective on things, to not get, lost in our little self. And this energy of this full moon also highlights that too, but with Saturn, right there, and Uranus squaring that moon. I mean, it is interesting because Uranus rules Aquarius, right? So the moon is in Uranus's sign. And so there's a reception, that's called a reception, right? And of course, Saturn is in Uranus's sign, so there's a reception there as well. So reception is good because reception obviously means receiving, right? It's receiving the energy. There's a reception of the energy, and that helps. That helps the quality, the underlying quality of the otherwise conflicting and tension-provoking energy that's there with Saturn square Uranus and Saturn on the moon. So the reception helps to some extent, which is good, but it still is a Saturn on the moon at the end of the day. You can't say it's it's not Jupiter on the moon, is it? It's not Venus on the moon, it's Saturn. So we just need to look at what Saturn correlates to, which is your construct of reality. In a nutshell. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. Yep. I'm going to go and have some lunch. Didn't sleep very well at all last night, so anyway, hopefully get a better sleep tonight. And I think I was reflecting on that today. I mean, it's got to do with some of my own physical things that are going on, but it probably also was largely connected to this Lionsgate, because last night it would have just been hours before the 8th kicked in, the 8th of August, which is what it is now. And so I think when you're in very sort of important transitions in your own life, and when Saturn and Uranus are transiting angular houses in your chart, which they are for me, and you've got a moon in Aquarius, which I do, then these energies I can feel inside my body viscerally. Like I can literally feel the tension, the resistance, the desire to just do the complete Uranus thing, and it's all happening, in all these waves, But I what I've come to understand is that you can't. It's not about abandoning Saturn and just doing the Uranus thing. You have to integrate Saturn. That's simply what you have to do, and it's not simple at all. But that's really the key. It's really about respecting Saturn, this time-space reality, through your own authentic integration in that journey, and being ready for the Uranus levels of uncertainties. And I've been going through this for the last 5 years, because it started about 5 years ago. Uranus was forming a really crucial aspect to my chart, and then to my Sun and Mercury, and then to my Moon. So I've had Uranus smash through my chart for the last 5 years, and yeah, it hasn't been easy. On that 3D level, it's been really tough, actually. But I'm still here. So anyway, yeah, love and star blessings. Is it a happy full moon? Well, it's not characterized by happiness regarding the aspects that it has with other bodies, but we can decide on how we want to work with this energy constructively and to our best capability as well, So I'll see you guys very soon. Possibly I might come back and talk about Venus in Leo. There's just a few things I'd love to share about her. So sending you all much love, and thanks for listening. Share, subscribe, add your comments and questions. Always interested to hear how you guys are going and how you're experiencing these energies, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.